Hello everyone, Ted here. Welcome to another Skin Club video. As you well know, Stage 3 of the Blast Austin Major is already over, it's been concluded, and there is still a little bit of time before the start of the playoffs. So I decided, you know what, this week's video is going to be dedicated towards my biggest disappointments in the team so far. I expected a lot more of, that didn't perform. Is going to be primarily focused on stage 3 participants, with one addition, that of the Falcons, obviously, as they are a team that should have been probably in stage 3 and should have been in the playoffs as well. So yeah, we're going to talk about the teams that I expected to do a little bit better, and I'm going to tell you why I expected them to do a little bit better. They are disappointing for, I'd say, pretty different reasons, all in all. And yeah, it's gonna be an exciting conversation. And at this point, I'm just a hater, am I not? So yeah, let's just get into it and see which are the teams that I thought were gonna do a little bit better, and try and find out why they didn't. All right, so obviously we're gonna start it off with the Falcons here, and I think there is no way we don't start it with the Falcons, because they were the one team that I could put my money on that I think actually has a 40% chance of winning the thing, right? With probably the other 60 in my head before the start of the event being Vitality. Well, it's a little bit lower than that, obviously, because there's always going to be a percentage of chance for everyone else to win, but you get what I meant. I thought they were the second team with the highest chance after Vitality to pick it up, and they didn't. So we're looking at their results, the fact that, they played a couple finals against Vitality, couldn't win in Melbourne, couldn't win in Blast Rivals, couldn't win in Dallas in the semifinals. So going into this one, everyone probably thought this is going to be where they just fly over everybody else. And I legitimately thought that even with them starting their participation from stage 2, that would have been a good opportunity for the Falcons to get going, get some momentum going, and then go into stage 3 feeling hot on their heels and potentially put up a really good fight against some of the top opposition. So why didn't it happen? Now, there is a couple reasons, and you could probably talk about the format. You can probably talk about the fact that they had to play 2 BO1s on day 1 as everybody else, obviously, but they didn't go their way. And when you lose the BO1s to teams like Bait and Limvision, you're ultimately putting yourselves in a pretty tough spot, right? There is a lot to be said about that. Obviously, there's the conversation that you can't remove BO1s at all if we're still going to have 32 teams at the major, because who the hell wants to be looking at best of threes all the way from stage 1, for example, right? And even stage 2. So it's really weird, because those tier 1 teams don't really play BO1s in any other event right now. Blast don't have BO1s, PGL don't have BO1s, IMs don't have BO1s, even EPL was main Swiss with BO3s as well, this time with 2 different stages. So I guess the major is the only tier 1 event that has best of ones still, and that makes it really awkward for some of those teams because they're not really used to it. You have one slow day, which they really did, and then they went into elimination best of threes. They were able to barely get that first win over OG, and then we go into that best of 3 against MIBR, which I'm pretty sure all of you saw, probably all of you definitely spotted the 5v3 on Inferno B bomb side post plant, which they should have won. It's just like no one was speaking. Monacy felt the unnecessary need to make a move towards top banana, turned around. Tessis picked up the fight without saying too much. Monacy missed the shot, and from that point on, Kickstone was 1 HP, and he crossed from dark to pool in the post plan and was forced to peek CT, and then Nico and Magis couldn't really do anything at all, right? So yeah, it was a really weird round. That's not to say that, obviously is Kickson or Tessis or Monacy's fault for losing the game, because some of them didn't play a 5 versus 3 perfectly. That's not what we're trying to say here. It was still an incredibly weird round to lose for that type of a team, because they would have won the game with it. It's just, I feel like this one round represents perfectly what type of form and what type of counterstrike the Falcons did show in that tournament. And I think it was quite disappointing, the fact that the Falcons, one of the best, or at least one of the better pissed around teams in tier 1 Counter-Strike on LAN this year, lost. And I have it written down here so I don't forget the specific number, but they won 3 out of 16 pistol rounds that they played at the major. And after winning, because they won only 3, they converted only 1 of them. And twice they did lose the force. And this is, especially when you're playing MR12, especially in the BL1s, this is, it's just not going to be easy to overcome in a way. And you can't afford to let those slip all of the time. You're always going to be starting on the back foot. You're never going to be playing a map where you feel like you're in control. Maybe this 13-6 over MIBR was the only one that looked comfortable for the Falcons, and even then, they just fell apart on Nuke. Inferno, they were on the back foot at all times as well. So, bar that 5 versus 3, obviously. So, yeah, it is really weird because I had a look at some of it, and well, I watched the majority of the games, and it just feels like things didn't click. It's really difficult to point out one person and say, hey, Nico didn't play well, so they lost. Tessis didn't play well, so they lost. Nico was actually one of their more solid players in this entire event. Of course, Monacy in the end as well, but that's an interesting fact. The first 3 maps that they played against Baitlin Vision and the first map against OG were all in the red sector rating wise for Monacy, and this is only the 4th time in his tier 1 career that this has happened over the course of the last couple years. So I guess it's just an embodiment of the fact that, you know, maybe they just didn't click, things didn't work out, and it's a bit of a shame because they would have made the playoffs far more interesting. But yeah, for me, this is probably the most disappointing, considering the expectations I had before the start of the event and the fact that I never really got to believe that they showed even 60% out of what they wanted to and what they could have. Will they make more changes now? Yes, I really don't want to believe that. Obviously, the performance dropped because they knew changes were happening, because the same thing happened with PGO Bucharest and they still won it, right? With Dexter being the MVP and he knew he was getting replaced. So I don't want to believe that either Magisk or Tessis would, you know, let that affect them. I think they are professionals and they gave it their all. But yeah, Falcons is the number 1. Let's go into the number 2. All right, so my number 2 biggest disappointment is actually 3D Max, and those are in no particular order. I guess only the Falcons is my top number 1. Now, with 3D Max, the story is as it follows. You're looking at the results that they had prior to this event. PGO Bucharest, they lose to FaZe Clan, and that was faced with Brokey still. They beat Aurora, which is fine. Then you go to IM Melbourne, they lose to FaZe, they lose to Gamer Legion, they beat Big. Then IM Dallas, where they lose to G2 and to Gamer Legion, and that was G2 with Hades, obviously, and they beat only Legacy by dropping a map. So prior results-wise, probably not the team to be looking at and saying we expect those guys to be in the playoffs. Now, the reason I was disappointed by the way that 3D Max got eliminated is because I actually rate this team, and I believe they play good Counter-Strike and they are creative. I believe they've got an identity. They've got a pretty clear identity. Unfortunately, a big part of that identity is them as well playing on high risk. Really high risk, and sometimes unjustified high risk, I feel like. The results in stage 1 or stage 2, but stage 1 for them and the major were great. They dropped 1BO1 to Legacy, but they dominated Bed Boom. They beat Nemiga in a tight game, and then they beat FaZe Clan pretty comfortably, which I thought was a good sign. Then we go into stage 3. They beat G2 13-5 to begin with, and I'm thinking, you know what, this is great. Those guys were even one of the teams that I was thinking might have an angle for a 3-0 or even a 3-1. Then they go into the Navi game, and this is where I think everything started falling apart for 3D Max. They have a 12-8 lead on Inferno against Navi. This game is going absolutely great for them. Lucky's playing well, Body's playing well, Gravity's. It's just a team effort. I mean, you can tell even by the scoreboards that the kills are pretty evenly distributed, and Exorcist was having some incredibly impactful multi-kill rounds on the CT side. So I was thinking this game is over. They go to a 12-8 lead on the CT side, and I thought they were just going to close it out easily. Navi was not looking that convincing at all, but then Navi bring it back. 3D Max let it slip. Again, the moment that things start going downhill for them, I think this is where 3D Max struggle. I think their plan A, and maybe their plan B is always nice going into a game with the game plan. I think the moment that they start feeling a little bit pressured, it's like individual players start trying to force the issue a little bit too much. And this is something that I've seen out of Body a couple times. Obviously, Body individually is a really good player, and is not the support player that he was back in the day on G2, let's say, when he was individually maybe even a liability at times. He's not that anymore, I don't think so. But it just feels like sometimes when they are pressured and they have their backs turned against the wall, There's going to be some badly timed pushes. There's going to be times where they're trying to get ahead of timing. And there was a couple examples of that in that pain game as well. So the reason I'm not talking about Vitality, I don't think we can blame them for losing against Vitality. I think all the other opportunities you've got, you need to capitalize on. And looking at the 4 teams that they played and the 3 teams they lost to, I think they should have comfortably beaten G2. They should have closed out the Navi game, and I think they should have beaten Pain. And I know they got 0-2. I know when you look at the scores, 9-13 on Inferno, it doesn't even look close. And then Nuke, they have an 8-4 lead and they lose both times. Both times they have a halftime lead. Both times they were a couple rounds away from closing. And both times there was forcing the issue. And I don't want to be the guy that is putting body under the bus, because if he feels like he needs to go and make those aggressive moves, there's 2 scenarios and we can never know because we don't know what's happening inside of the team. Maybe he just doesn't feel like anyone else is taking enough initiative and he is the one that needs to do it. Maybe the communication on the other side of the server is not proper, so that's why he thinks he's got space that he doesn't. But on Inferno, there was just, I'm going to give you a quick example. Around where Body's pushed towards bottom banana, he hears players rotating away from T ramp. He's a CT, obviously, to top middle. They're throwing some utility on that A-bomb side. His teammates have a 3-man stack, and it's a 4v4 or 4v5. 3D Max have 3 people on that A-bomb side. Now, I'm going to lie to you if they had an AVP or didn't, but still, it's a full buy. They're pretty equipped. They have the setup there. The only way that this round ends without 3D Max getting an opportunity is if Body just peaks too early and dies trying to flank them before the play starts. Pain hasn't even triggered the execution yet. He's heard the steps, but there's no noise being made on that A-bomb side. There's no time for the T's to go long towards CT spawn and back B. So he's got no reason to move, really, right? He just needs to wait for his teammates to say, hey, the execution is happening, then start with the flank. They didn't know he was bottom banana, so he would have had a quick flank regardless, and you're putting your money into your teammates holding on. He didn't do that. Went for the aggressive play, died. T's group up, go back to B bomb side, instant end of the round. And there was a couple of situations like that on Nuke as well, with outside fights on the T side not being that coordinated when you know there's an AVP on the other side. I can go on for a lot of time on this one, because I did watch the game and I did cast it in Bulgarian. But yeah, this is the reason I'm disappointed with 3D Max. It's not because they were expected per se to make it to the playoffs. It's because I think they had a draw that gave them an opportunity to do so, and I don't think they capitalized on that opportunity the way that they probably wanted to, and the way that I know this team can. All right, we're keeping it going. Team number 3 that I think should have done a little bit better, and that is Virtus.pro. And I'm gonna try and keep it short here, because obviously all of us know that there's a lot of whispers around Virtus.pro, mainly connected to Electronic potentially leaving the team, and we don't really know what the future holds for this lineup. We don't really know if Finn, as the coach, is going to stay, even though he arrived just a month ago. We don't know if Electronic is going to stay. We don't know anything. The only thing we probably know is that Flit and Fame should have a secure spot, because they are still world class rifles. But even for Flamus and Icy is probably a little bit shaky at this point. The one thing I want to say, first of all, to begin with, even in stage 2 in the pick'ems, I didn't put Virtus.pro to go in. I didn't believe. The one reason that I am disappointed with the fact that they didn't make playoffs is because they actually made everyone believe. They gave us the ultimate tease and the ultimate gaslight of us thinking that it was an us problem, that we didn't see the potential. And since the start of the season, I really liked Virtus.pro, and I've always liked the players. I think they have a really cool mix going on. But it's just the fact that prior to the major, PGO Astana was not that big of a deal. They lose to MIBR, they lose to Astralis, they lose to NAP, they beat only Big and M80. IM Melbourne, they lose to Liquid and FlyQuest. PGO Bucharest, they get eliminated by G2. That was obviously G2 with Monacy still. But so far this year, I haven't really seen a lot of reasons to get hyped up about VP. Is like every month and a half, 2 months, they will give you that occasional really good performance, and then they will go back into the abyss, and it will still look really odd, even though they have great pieces. Now they did go into the major, And they made me believe. They get a 13-2 win over OG, a 13-3 win over Bait. They beat Pain in a best of three, and that's in stage two. But that was the best looking Virtus Pro that we've seen. Electronic individually posting his highest rated performance individually since the start of the season. That was a 132. And he was the third highest rated player in stage two as well. Fame had a 126 as well. And then I'm looking at this team of VP. They go into stage two or stage three. They beat Mouse in a really tight Mirage game. They had some new things being implemented, some cool executes in towards that A bomb side. They had things that looked up to speed with the meta and what the top dogs are doing. Against Mouse, against Legacy, they were able to, go down the level. It's kind of like they changed their own frequency to the one of Legacy so they can be competitive with them. Again, a really close BO1, but one that they win. And the fact that you take down Mouse in the best of one, the fact that you tame Legacy right after they beat Vitality, for me that meant something. And I thought they were playing alright Counter-Strike. It wasn't the cleanest one ever, but things were looking good. Flamus was playing alright, Electronic was playing well, Flit and Fame as well. And then the best of three start going, and I start noticing something. There was, I guess, tough draw is the first thing, because you lose to Furia, you lose to Vitality. Vitality, again, we can't comment on. Furia was just hot on their heels and they stormed VP. This game against Pain was the disappointing one, I think, and it's only poetic that we have two teams that lost to Pain that we say we're disappointed in best of threes, but it is how it is. I think if you're a Virtus Pro and you go into a 2-2 matchup to qualify for major playoffs and you're playing against an organization that's never been in playoffs, against 5 players that never have been in playoffs, some of them don't have more than one major under their belt, you need to win. And Mirage was a bit of a stomp, but then on Inferno, VP outclassed Pain, and at this point you're going into Dust 2, which has been probably one of the most, if not the only solid map of VP so far this year before the start of the major. Now their Inferno is looking good as well, but I thought they had no excuses not to win that. And the fact that they were able to wake up towards the end and try to do that 6-12 comeback or 5-12 comeback, that was great. But if you're Virtus Pro, you can't let it get that close to an end game for you to start winning rounds. And they gave it a good shot, but they lost the final round on the B-bomb side. And there was a couple weird, really weird rounds against pistols, man advantages, unlikely retakes from Pain onto that B-bomb side. There was a lot of weird rounds that VP couldn't convert that I thought they should have easily. And you go into stage 3, and then you're looking at a couple different phenomenons. First of all, Electronic from a 132 individually goes to a 0.86, and then Fit and Fame, that were the two main characters, I guess, that were taking initiative on the T side in stage 2. In stage 3, take a lot less initiative. Flamus was the one that was being sent first a lot more. So there was, even in the way that they were approaching certain maps, there was changes. There was changes in terms of who's going to go in first on certain executes. They were constantly changing stuff as the major went on. And obviously you can't be critical of that because, we don't know if it's conscious. Maybe it was matchup based. Maybe some teams didn't let you play in the way that you did in stage 2. Maybe you had to change the game plan to some extent. Maybe it was, sometimes it just happens. Maybe it's the map. Maybe it's how your opponents play the map. You can't play the same type of Counter-Strike all the time, I guess. But it felt like they tried to make some readjustments mid-event when things were working out. But obviously it is difficult to say that because, we'd have to go really deep into their game plan. And even then, unless they go out and say, yes, we wanted to, it could have just been, a coincidence that the numbers started going up and down according to, as I told you, the maps, the matchups, and the teams on the other side. But yeah, especially when you just beat Pain 2-0 in the previous stage, to lose to them like that was a bit disappointing. And I didn't think VP should have made it to the playoffs, but after how they started and the fact that they got to play against a team that they had already beaten that is far less experienced, I do consider them not making it into the playoffs a bit of a disappointment. All right, we're on to the final one, on to the final team that I expected something out of and didn't really deliver a lot. Now, I was really thinking about whether I should include Liquid into that, but I don't think Liquid should be included because of obviously changes coming up and all the negative signs and whatnot. I don't think people really had massive expectations of them. So we're going to go for the low-hanging fruit, and we're going to speak a little bit about the team that made playoffs in every single Tier 1 LAN that they played this year, and they couldn't do it in the major. They made 8 out of 8 playoffs. Obviously, they didn't win tournaments, but that is the only team that has beaten Vitality in 2025 in a best of 3. Consistently, they've been making playoffs, even though they've been losing to some teams that they probably shouldn't have. PJ Astana was a weird one where they lost to Astralis. Definitely should have won that event. I am Dallas. They lost to the Mongols, which I guess fair enough. But again, they are the team that you're going up against in a head-to-head for, the best after the best. Yeah, you get what I mean. The elite group of 2-3 teams after the ones that are going to be contending for events. And then we go into the major. And again, I think for Aurora, the disappointing part comes in mainly from the fact that they started really well with that 13-5 against FaZe. Jota was phenomenal. Everything was working out. Xantares was great. After watching that game, I was 100% sure they were going through. I just thought those guys are entering the way that other favorites struggle to, with a lot of conviction, playing high-tempo counterstrike, looking warmed up. I didn't think there was an opportunity for them not to go through. Then they play against the really hot on their heels Furia. Fair enough. You don't make it. That happens. You lose to Furia. This game against G2 is the one that I think was their missed opportunity. You're playing against that type of G2 that is not going to have their coach after obviously Taz is leaving for Saw, is not going to be playing with Hades, is in a lot of turmoil. You're playing against those guys. In that type of a matchup, you need to win it, especially with the first half that Jota had as a pit player, mind you, on CT side in front of he was 18-5. Every single time G2 decided to go beat his Xantares and major things were not clicking, and in the end of the half, your B players had 10 kills combined and your pit player has 18 kills, which I think there was a clear issue there, and it was everything bar Jota's individual level. But yeah, I don't really think there is a lot to say about them. There was a lot of moments this year when they would, mention that they're getting tired or there's some health issues with the team. Now, I don't think they probably went in with the best mood and a lot of confidence into the major, I guess. I don't know, but I really hope that we see them bounce back, because that is a little bit disappointing considering they didn't even make the Shanghai major after making playoffs in Copenhagen. And now here in Austin, they made it, but they got only one win, and that was it. And about the best of 3 against Mouse. I mean, again, you can't really blame them. It's one of the few teams that's above them in the world rankings. We can let that one sit, and it's crazy enough that in a 1-2 matchup you need to play against Mouse, but all they had to do to avoid that was beat G2, which I think should have happened. But yeah, this is my final big disappointment. Also, a couple things to add to that performance of Aurora, the fact that it was Jota's worst event so far this year, bar that good performance against G2 and a good performance against FaZe. Individually, worst event for him, Wakadia, and Woxic in 2025. And then for Xantares, it was his 3rd worst. So things just didn't click. Things didn't work for Aurora, and hopefully they bounce back for the other major. And hopefully things are going to be a little bit better. But yeah, those are my main disappointment takes, so to speak. I don't think it's going to be relevant to make that type of a video for the playoffs, because I think the moment you make it into the playoffs, it can't really be disappointing unless Vitality lose to Navi in the first round, for example. But yeah, everyone else, I think it was either expected, or you could say they should be happy with what they did. G2 should be happy with what they did, even though they could have made it through, but still, no one expected that. Legacy definitely should be happy. Limvision as well. Liquid, as we said, no reason to be disappointed. Well, there is a reason to be disappointed always when you're a name like Liquid with those players and you go 0-3. But again, the fact that they had to play Mouse in a 0-2 and they were nearly there to eliminate them was probably the only disappointing factor. The fact that they had a 5v3 and they had a map in match point, that they could have eliminated Mouse, and you never know what was going to happen after that. But all in all, not a team that I think I expected to make it into the playoffs and be any type of contender, maybe in a couple months, maybe for the next major for sure. And we know there will be changes there. So yeah, it's a bit of a tangent for Liquid, but that's going to be all that there is to it. Let me know if there are any other teams that disappointed you personally. And yeah, we're, I guess, going to try and keep it on a positive note for the next video. We're going to talk about something good, not something bad and something disappointed. But yeah, I guess I'll see you then. Thank you for watching. Big shout out to SkinClub, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.